opinion is the skin around the entrance wound contained stripling, which indicates that the gun was fired a distance 12 to 18 inches away from Mr. Kreller's head in a downward fashion. That's murder, that's not manslaughter. And I disagree with Ms. White and her statement that this is a manslaughter case. So for those reasons, we remain strongly opposed to his request for parole.
Well, that's the always reliable Assistant District Attorney Randy Meyer arguing something that you might say is not irrelevant. We are watching the parole hearing of a man who took another man's life in cold blood over 30 years ago. Why are they bringing this up now? Well, we'll get to that. But before we do, we're going to take a blast to the past, to his 2023 commutation hearing, because he was originally given a life sentence without the opportunity for parole, but the governor commuted his sentence, giving him an opportunity for parole. He fell on the governor here on this list, on the governor's 56 that he commuted right before he left office. And we have a playlist covering every single one of these 56 cases. So let's go to a blast to the past, that classic Miss Jackson hearing, and I'll unpack it at the end.
Gardo is serving a life sentence on the charge of second-degree murder, having been sentenced on February the 1st of 1996. Mr. Silva, is that information accurate?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Silva, your case has been assigned to Ms. Bonnie Jackson. Ms. Jackson will begin our interview process. Would you please answer any questions she might have?
Yes, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Silva.
Good morning, Miss Jackson.
I'm fighting back a sneeze, so give me a moment, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, Mr. Silva, you're 48 years old?
47.
You're right, 47. You served approximately 29 years on this offense, is that correct?
A little bit under 28. A little bit under 28 years.
Okay, approximately 28. And at the time of the offense, you were 18 years of age, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So I have, and my board members with me have your packet of information. We have offense reports. We have a lot of information about your case. But what I'd like to ask you to do is just briefly explain to the board what happened on the date that the victim was killed.
Yes, ma'am. The high school that I had went to, it was their homecoming football game. A friend of mine who we played together, he was playing on the team. After the game, we went to a bar to shoot pool and throw some darts. While I was there, I had gotten to a verbal altercation with Brett Kreller. One thing led to another, and we changed locations. And when we went to the next place, we wound up getting into a physical fight, fist fight. And somebody came out the house with a bat, actually hit me with the bat. When I got struck with the bat, I saw my gun on the ground and I grabbed it and I fired one time. And tragically, that act was responsible for taking Mr. Kreller's life. Mm-hmm. It is something that has caused a great deal of pain to his family. And for that, I'm sure.
So let me just backtrack. You had been at a bar?
Yes, ma'am.
And how were you able to get into a bar at age 18?
Well, they let us go into bars at 18 in 94.
And had you consumed any alcoholic beverages?
I had a drink or two, but not too much, no, ma'am.
Or a drink or two of what?
Alcohol.
I know, but what kind of alcohol?
I had a pineapple and amaretto.
And you were there with a group of friends?
Yes, ma'am.
How many of you all were in your group?
It had 4 of us.
And did you know Mr. Kreller at the time of this incident?
I knew of him, but I didn't know him personally.
How did you know of him?
He was friends with another group of guys that I knew. I knew them, and his friends, the ones that I knew.
And how did the altercation at the bar begin? What led to a disagreement between you and Mr. Kreller at the bar?
Well, I'm not really sure, Miss Jackson. He came up to me and he started hollering some things at me. I started hollering some things back. And while we were there, we got kind of like separated. And like I said, we changed locations.
Now let's talk about that. Someone at the bar, whether it's the bouncer or the bartender, asked both groups to leave. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And so why didn't you just go home as opposed to going to this second location that you referenced?
I can only just tell you that I was dumb. I was hot-headed. And, like I say, we had a verbal disagreement, altercation, and we just went to another place to have a fight.
And how many people were with Mr. Kreller?
At that time, he had 1 person with him.
There were 4 of you and 2 of them. And what was the second location?
I didn't know it at the time, but we went to someone else's house. I didn't know who the house was for. I followed him.
So y'all just followed him to the next location?
Yes, ma'am.
Intention of continuing the fight?
Yes, ma'am.
Why did you have a gun? How did you come in possession of a gun, and why did you bring it with you? Why did you take it out of the car?
I can only say that I was a young, dumb person. Very, very naive. I can't explain to you why I owned a gun at all. I just chalk that up to being, again, just young, dumb, and being careless.
And so it's my understanding from reading the accounts, when you got to that second location, you and your friends started to fight Mr. Kreller and the person with him. Someone came out of the house where you all congregated and had a baseball bat. Perhaps there were 2 people who came out of that residence and there were baseball bats involved, and you were struck with the bat, and then you picked up the gun and Mr. Kreller was shot in the head. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you are the person who fired the shot. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, let's talk about 18-year-old Mr. Silva. Were you still in high school? Had you graduated from high school? I think I showed that you had dropped to the 11th grade. Is that correct? Did you drop
Yes,
out
ma'am.
of 11th grade? And why did you end up dropping out of high school in the 11th grade?
I was just wild. I had no aim or ambition in life. My grades were poor in school, and I was just out of control.
And why do you think that was?
I couldn't put a finger on that, Miss Jackson. I can say that, I didn't have direction. I watched the wrong type of things on television. I listened to the wrong kind of music, and I just was just not a very, very smart individual.
What about you were drinking at 18? What about drug use?
Yes, ma'am. I use drugs too.
Did you start using drugs?
I was probably about 15 years old.
And what kind of drugs were you involved with?
I smoked marijuana, and from time to time I snort cocaine.
Okay. What about LSD?
Yes, ma'am. I had tried LSD before too.
And at 15 years old, how did you come in contact with all this drug use?
I surrounded myself around the wrong sorts of people. And I was introduced to some drugs by my father also.
Explain that to us.
Well, Dad, he was young, and he introduced me to smoking weed and trying LSD.
Well, how old were you when that happened?
I was 15 years old when we started smoking weed together. Right at about 15.
Were your parents together?
No, ma'am. My parents got divorced when I was about 4 years old.
And so you would have visits with your dad, and your dad introduced you to smoking marijuana?
Yes, ma'am.
After dropping out of high school, were you employed?
I was employed temporarily.
Kind of work?
I used to wash cars and detail cars at my uncle's car lot. And that's the main thing that I used to do to make money.
Well, let's move forward to, I see that at one point you had been indicted for manslaughter. That was in 1994. You were initially indicted for manslaughter, but then they came back and indicted you for murder. Do you have any knowledge of why charge was upgraded from manslaughter to second-degree murder?
Yes, ma'am. I believe that some of Mr. Creller's friends told the police that I had been threatening to kill him prior to the time that this tragedy took place.
Is that true?
No, ma'am. That's not true.
All right, well, let's talk about your time since you've been incarcerated. I show that your risk assessment is low. You have a good institutional record. You've been a Class A trustee now for 8 years.
Yes, ma'am.
And your current job is as a groundskeeper. Is that correct?
I'm the recreation orderly at Camp D. I'm responsible for organizing all the sporting activities within the camp.
We'll talk about that, okay? But
Okay, all right.
on your prison record, it shows your job as groundskeeper.
Okay.
Is that just kind of a general term to cover what you do in the recreational department? I'm just trying to get a note.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I show that you've taken some programming, you've taken Cage Your Age. So was anger, as you look back, was anger an issue for you?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell us about that.
The earliest memories of my life were of my mother and father fighting, physically fighting. That's the first things that I remember of being a little child. And the fighting continued most of my childhood years. When my mother remarried, she remarried to a man who was an alcoholic and a drug addict. And I found him from time to time beating on my mother and it's affected me tremendously. At the time, I wasn't aware of what it did to me, but after learning things and taking different programs and evaluating myself, I realized that a lot of times I would just mimic what I saw as a child.
So, how did anger management cage array specifically help you understand and cope with anger issues?
It afforded me the knowledge to be able to think before you act, to critically analyze a situation, and just not act upon something just because your instincts or your impulses would lead you in that direction. That was the biggest thing Cage of Rage did for me.
What, given what you told us about your drug and alcohol use, what programs have you taken to address your issues with substance abuse?
Well, I've taken substance abuse and transaction analysis, and I've attended numerous Alcoholics Anonymous meetings over the years.
Did you take living in balance?
No, ma'am, I'm not taking living in balance.
I have it in my notes, so. So how do you, what makes you think that you've adequately addressed your issues with substance abuse? I mean, the Department of Corrections offers a number of substance abuse programs, and your programming in that area has been limited. So my question is, why don't you feel that you need or should have taken more programs specifically addressing substance abuse issues?
But I've taken the programs that have been available when I could. But the biggest thing that I learned about the substance abuse classes, I've been to different classes. By me having that substance abuse and transaction analysis certificate, they only have certain amounts of people of class space. So I would go in there and sit in on different classes and deal with different facilitators. I've actually helped certain groups with their facilitation of that. The number one thing is just knowing what your trigger points are.
What are yours?
And being
What are yours? What are yours?
My trigger points would have been, they are, being around the wrong people, putting myself in bad situations that I shouldn't be. Another thing is, the anger, feelings of rejection, which I now understand having to do with seeing all the fighting that I saw as a young child, in a way that I thought that was me being rejected, and it kind of carried it over. So those are trigger points. But the important thing about overcoming your trigger points is your safety nets and your safe havens, and knowing when to turn away and where you can go.
You have had 25 write-ups. The last 3 were in 2010, which was a Rule 4, 2012, a Rule 1, and 2013, another Rule 4. So it's been 10 years since your last disciplinary write-up. Tell us about the Rule 4s. What were they about? Do you remember?
I believe the Rule 4 was hanging clothes up during the daytime. Like, we're not supposed to hang clothes up before 3 o'clock to let them dry. So that's what they were for. I had, when I was working and I came in, I washed my shirt and hung it up to let it dry off some. And it was before the 3 o'clock window when we're allowed to hang our stuff up.
In 2012, you had a Rule 1, which was a contraband. What was that about?
I was a cell block orderly. serving the food and cleaning up the area, the living areas for the people on CCR and extended lockdown. We stayed down there till after our last meal, which means we wouldn't get off of work till after 4. So I had ran to the store to grab a few items, and I brought it back with me to my job site, and that was what the contraband was for. That's what he wrote me up for.
During the course of your incarceration, have you had any write-ups for intoxication or contraband that was illegal substances?
Yes, ma'am.
When was that? When was that?
There was about a 4.5 or 5 year window when I got several contraband charges.
And when was that window?
From 2004 to 2009.
And was your last intoxication or illegal drug contraband right up in 2009?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, I see that a lot of your programming has been directed towards becoming a certified personal trainer, certified in sports nutrition. Tell us why you concentrated in those particular areas.
I feel that physical fitness is very important into maintaining not only your physical health, but your mental health. And it's always been a passion of mine. And that's what I have used to spread good news of sobriety and living life in control to a myriad of people.
I see that you also have taken victim awareness.
Yes, ma'am.
About that, tell us what you learned in victim awareness.
Victims awareness was a very impactful and powerful course. It's taught me to have empathy, and that my actions don't just affect me, but it affects other people, where it might not be just the person, but the people that are connected with that individual. And I thought victims awareness was, of all the programs I've taken, that is the one that's had a profound effect on my life.
And in what way has your life been changed as a result of taking victim awareness?
It makes me think of other people before I take an action or before I do anything. Whereas, and there was a time in my life where I would just do whatever I felt like doing. But now, if it's something just as simple as turning a fan on, I'll ask other people around me, "Hey, is it all right to turn the fan on?" Just because we don't know how our actions affects others, and that's the thing that's just really stuck with me over time.
What is moral compass?
Oh, Moral Compass was a wonderful course also. It taught me what I've been for a long time as a layman mentor, where I might not have the certification or the accolades to say, "Hey, he's a mentor," but it's so important to pour goodness into the lives of others. And when you've been through a lot and they have young people they don't really know what they're facing, they need someone that they can talk to, someone that they can trust. And that Moral Compass has taught me so much on what I've been doing over the years, and given me even more so.
You've also been involved in a number of faith-based programs. Tell us some of those programs and why you chose to become involved in them.
Well, I gave my life to Jesus Christ in 2010. I got baptized, and I believe that he is my rock. And so long as I stand on him, I shall never fall. And all of these courses I've taken, they've helped build me. They've helped edify me to turn me into the man that I am now. I have preached. I've been the head pastor for the cell block ministry from 2016 all the way until the time the pandemic hit. Just recently, we started back that ministry again. I've taught numerous Bible studies and preached sermons over the years. And whenever they have outside guests come to be a part of our church group, I always help them in any way, shape, or form that I'm needed. So this is the faith-based courses and becoming a Christian have just been a tremendous blessing into my life. And I am a bedrock in our community there at Camp D. At the House of Deliverance Church.
There's a lot of victim impact statements. A lot of people have been hurt, harmed by the loss of Mr. Crowley. Obviously, his parents, his siblings, his uncles, his aunts, his cousins, and just a host of just family friends. So what would you say to them today? What would you like to say to them at this moment?
To everyone whose lives I've affected, there are no words to say. Sometimes words can be shells or superficial. We have a song that we sing in church where we say we couldn't praise God enough if we had 10,000 tongues. And to everyone who I've impacted, I could not apologize to you all enough if I had 10,000 tongues. My actions were senseless, they were reckless, and I had no regard whatsoever for what I did. And if I told you I'm sorry 10,000 times, it wouldn't be good enough. I apologize from the bottom of my heart, and I'm full of sorrow for what I've done to you all.
You also have a number of letters of support from Mr. J. Batts, who's the past chairman of the Board of Crime Stoppers. You have a letter from Warden Benoit, from Nicholas Sanders, Assistant Warden. You have multiple letters of support from family and friends. But I think the ones that are most insightful for me are the letters written by inmates and people in the prison who have worked around you and with you. And I'd like to just mention, mention a couple of them. One of the letters is from Darrell Williams, who was in the camp. He was a Camp D education clerk, and he writes, a year and a half ago, I approached Mr. Silver for his advice on how I should handle a personal and delicate situation with an offender in my dormitory. I needed to talk with someone I trust, so I turned to Mr. Silver. After informing Mr. Silver of my issue with this offender, Mr. Silver then went and spoke to this person. And after doing so, Mr. Silver called us both into a private area of the recreation yard, whereby using his diplomacy convinced this offender of his misguided ways. After that little meeting, my problem with that offender was solved. I retired from government work back in 1999 after 32 years of public service. He said, under my supervision, I had to men and women of whom had many years of experience in the building and permitting industry. I have witnessed some very good leaders and some not so good in my 72 years on the earth. In my eye and in my mind, Mr. Silva would be placed as one of those at the top of my list as an outstanding leader of men and a prime example for others to follow. So tell me about your, I don't want to get into the specifics, but just tell me some of the ways that you have mentored to or helped other inmates.
When people have issues that they're dealing with in their lives, be it with their cases, the amount of time that they have, or battling addiction, they come to me. I have become a safety net and a safe haven for many people across the different spectrums of life which we deal with here in prison. If it's a private situation between just one guy and what he's dealing with, I'll share with him the experiences I've had in my life, and I'll impart wisdom upon him. A situation like Mr. Williams, where it's another guy, I'll just be like the mediator and let them talk it out and just show both parties, getting to see from the other side's point of view. And like I said earlier, that in life, it's about how you live, not about what you say. And I try to pour goodness into people in any opportunity that I can. And they know that my door is always open whenever they need help.
Warden, can you tell us about Mr. Silva?
Just a clarification, currently he is a minimum B as far as his trustee status. He's had that since 2017. You know, I look back at his record and probably substance abuse, any CTRP courses as far as living in balance. One thing that I did see in here is that back in 98 and 2000, where he was kind of in and out of the blocks when they're in the cell blocks, they don't have access to programming, but he does have certificates. So at those times when he was out of the blocks, he was searching and getting something related to his substance abuse. I did notice that in looking at him. He has been a recreational orderly since 2016 at Camp D, in addition to the other outside of his work. His ministering and the other things that he's done, you know, last write-up, 2013, we've not had any problems.
Thank you, Warden. Mr. Chairman, that's all I have.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jackson. Mr. Freeman has a question.
Yeah, I have one question for you, Mr. Silva. Were you a gang member?
No, sir.
Did you have any affiliation with the Latin King?
No, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll hear from your supporters. Mr. Packy Thompson.
Yes, sir. I'm Patrick Thompson. I pastor Bayou Blue Assembly of God Church in Houma, Louisiana. I've been going to Camp D for about 12 years, ministering in the church there. Had a chance to know Luke. I've watched him interact with the other inmates. I've seen the respect that a lot of them have for him because of his work in the lockdown area that he goes and spends time with those guys. Luke has become a friend as we've spent time together and talked with each other. Of course, you know, as a pastor, I get a chance to interact with that team, and he's worked real close with Brother Michael Houston, who's the pastor of the Deliverance Church and kind of was running things there. I've watched him, like I said, and I've watched him interact with other inmates. And it's, you know, it's when you see the other inmates shows him respect and ask him questions, they come in as we would sit down and ask him, hey, you know, I've got this going on. What do you think I can do? And Luke gives some pretty solid advice. And so I just think that, you know, we're talking about a man that's been incarcerated for quite some time, you know, and it appears to me that he has taken advantage of the time that he's been there to better himself and to try to be a positive part of the community that he's in. And it appears to me that he's been successful.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you. White? Yes, ma'am.
It's Lori Light now, retired from judging in fact.
Sorry.
Here on behalf of Luke as a witness, of someone who's known him for more than 20 years. Started out as Luke's lawyer. And back when I was representing him, Luke was still full of, I can't think of another term except pissing vinegar. And he was young. He was, his mindset was still thinking this was all self-defense. Luke was never in a position where he thought that he didn't do something terrible. Luke has always accepted responsibility, and it was the intent of his case when I started the case back 16 to 20 years ago, that it would be a manslaughter and that Luke would have a 40-year sentence and that Luke would come home sometime after that. What Luke does not have in good sense at that young age, he had in support from other family members, and you can see he still has incredible support. I have visiting his grandfather, the namesake of Ricardo Silva, and his aunt, who's here, as well as his mother, who has been a staunch supporter of him all these years. His father is here with him. He has a sister and everyone. I've never seen family support like Luke has. And the fact that Luke has matured into someone is the reason that I'm, and the person that he's matured into is the reason that I am here today. I'm not here as a paid advocate. I'm not here as his lawyer. I'm here as an actual witness, and because I've retired, I'm able to do that. You all may know that I started the first reentry court in Louisiana. So I'm aware of what it takes for people to make it when they get out of jail. And I'm here to tell you that I think that Luke can do it and will do it. And I don't think that he is not worth your risk. I also will offer, if the Parole family does not ever want him in that parish, my husband and I have a 50-acre farm, and I would offer Luke to live on our farm, while he also takes reentry classes and works with the Parole project. Luke is matured. I don't believe Luke, because he did not have a prior criminal history. I do not think that Luke will be a risk and return to the criminal life. I do not think that Liz will return to any type of drug use, even when he has the ability to obtain it. She's had the ability in jail to obtain it. As I'm aware, sadly, they still can use it in jail. Luke has a perspective and thought processes that have taken him outside of confinement, which is something that in the success cases that I have had, one of those being Morris Henderson, who was here, who's also my client. Morris is someone in the community that has done great things. And I've been able to identify from 16 years of being a judge and watching the people that are successes versus not successes. And Luke is someone that I would expect him to always be a success. You know, I was never the kind of lawyer, never the kind of judge that ever thought that someone was innocent, except for one case in which DNA exonerated them. And I actually thought that client was guilty and was surprised that DNA exonerated them. So it's not like anyone can ever say what someone will not do or what someone will do, but his risk is extremely low. And I hope he'll be given a chance. His case started out as manslaughter. It was upped. The family, these are lovely families. Luke is a product of bad raising, but love from people that have stayed with him and never left him once he was in this. And that has carried him through these years and made him think what will life be, and he still has hopes and dreams. And I hope that you all will give him that opportunity that he never had in his case, in which he could have pled guilty to a manslaughter. And I feel like the case was manslaughter. That's what we always argue for, not people's not. So I asked this board to please give you a recommendation.
Thank you very much. Now we'll hear from Ms. Cynthia Burbovich.
Good morning. My name is Cynthia Baburovich, and I'm Luke Silva's mom. First, I'd like to apologize to the Cruller family for all the pain that has been caused. And I can't tell you how sorry I truly am. I would like to thank the board for allowing me to speak on my son Luke's behalf today. Luke had a difficult childhood, as you've heard. Made poor choices in marriages, and he and I were both victims of physical and mental abuse. There's nothing I can do to change that for him. I did, of course, move on from those two fellas, and I have a wonderful husband now. I've been married to for 15 years. We have a home for him. My brother has a job for him, and this whole family is here to support him. Luke walks with Christ. He is reformed. He is sorrowful. He's loving. He's giving. He's caring. He's passionate. He spent 27 years here. I feel like he has reformed, and I really believe that if he were able to come home, he could change so many other lives out here with his vision and with his Christianity, that he just has changed so many hearts. As a matter of fact, there was a man that came to our car lot one day, and he told my brother, he said, I'm looking for a car. I just got out of Angola. And my brother said, Cindy, this guy was in Angola. And I said, hey, do you know my son Luke? He says, I sure do. He used to preach down in the cell blocks when I was there, and his sermons were so powerful, the hair would stand up on my neck. So that speaks volumes. He's changed me. He's taught me so much. I'm sorry. There's not much more I can say, except I beg for your mercy to please let him come home.
Thank you very much, ma'am. We appreciate
Time.
it. Thank you. Now we'll hear from the opposition. We'll hear from Mr. James Kreller. Victor. Excuse me.
Anybody that's lost a son, anybody knows how it's. It's a trouble thing. People talk about wishes and things that people can do. We have things we wish my son could have done. That will never be allowed. He's missing every day. We love him. And I'm sorry for my actions right now. But it's something that will never go away. No matter what happens, I'll never be able to give him a hug. Tell him what. Didn't think I would be here talking like this. I thought I'd be much stronger, so I apologize. Sad thing is, the one thing that will never change in my mind, that the person we're here for will always be a convicted murder. I'm sorry to say that, but that's a fact. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jamie Meyer.
My name's Jamie Meyer, and I'm Greg Creller's little sister. He was 3 years older than me. In 1994, we were just getting to the age where we were becoming friends instead of just siblings. We had a great childhood. We played together a lot, but we were able to start doing things together. I was in Dominican. Fred had just graduated from Jesuit. And it was a fun summer for us. He included me in things that he did. And we got to hang out more as friends. And even though he was getting ready to go away to college, I was excited about his opportunities. He came home from college and said that he wasn't going back. And I was excited because my friend was back, my brother. So on November 4th, 1994, he was going out with his friends. And I remember laying on the living room floor watching TV when he left. Little did I know my whole world changed that night. I remember that night like it was yesterday. I was woken up by his friend beating on my front door, telling me that something happened. So when I went to go get my parents, they weren't there. I knew something had to be really wrong. Wayne and I got the phone book out and started calling around the hospitals. And when my parents walked back in the house, they didn't even have to speak. I knew it was bad. Later on, we found out that as our family changed forever, that the defendant went home and climbed in his bed. And that's where the police found him. As a family unit, we're close. We play together, we eat together, we love each other big. On November 4th, our family changed. We are all grieving in our own way. Each of us changed that day, both mentally and emotionally. But we vowed to take care of each other no matter what. We realized we needed to love each other bigger. We still deal in our own way. As for me, I went to counseling for a while, and I also asked God for help. I can tell you that anyone who knows me today knows of Brett, because I speak of him often, and I think of him even more. I was 15 years old and my sister 12 when the trial began. We were sitting in the hallway at the court before it started one day, and when the defendant walked through, he barked at us like a dog. As time went on, I came to realize it was to intimidate us, but it didn't work. He was convicted of second-degree murder for killing Brett. Oof, the judicial system came through for us. It was all over, or so I thought. Then the phone call started. Back to court for this appeal, back to court for that appeal. The phone call that his sentence was overturned, and then that was overturned. I realized after many years of this that it will never be over. We have a life sentence too. It's trying, to say the least. But with the grace of God and each other, we will be broken again and again and again. I, Jamie Myers, Brett's little sister, am a fighter. And I will continue fighting for him until my dying day. He doesn't get any opportunities to be different or reintroduced into society. All of those rights were taken from him that day. So please continue to hold his murderer accountable for what he did. And thank you for hearing us.
Thank you very much.
I also have a statement from my mother, Kate Kreller, if I can briefly.
Ma'am, we really have a lot of people to speak. We've read all the information that we submitted to you.
Okay, thank you.
We'll hear from Ms. Stacy, the GM.
Morning, my name is Stacy Dejani, and I'm the youngest sister of Brett. Thank you for giving my family the opportunity to speak our piece. My brother was one of a kind. He was kind, smart, funny, and loved to play jokes on people. He was a guy that you could count on when you needed him and would give the shirt off his back for just about anyone. Anyone that had the opportunity to meet him was blessed to have him in their life. On November 4th, 1994, all opportunities that he would have in life were taken away by Luke, a coward who took a gun to a fist fight, then went home and went to sleep with no remorse. Brett lost the opportunity to continue being an amazing son, an amazing brother, and an amazing friend. He lost the opportunity to go to college and start a career to support the family that he wanted to have. He lost the opportunity to meet his brothers-in-law, his niece, and many other family members to come. He lost the opportunity to live a full life that he so much enjoyed and looked forward to many more years to come. Today, we're here because Luke wants the opportunity to be set free from the choice that he made to take a life. The opportunity to continue his life as a son, a sibling, and a friend. My question is why? Why does he get this opportunity when he made a choice to take away all opportunities from Brett and so many opportunities from his family and friends? Why does he get the opportunity to walk the street as a free man when we are still living in hell every day? Our lives were completely destroyed on that night, and we still suffer every day. Why does he get the opportunity to live free from any more consequences? He was convicted of second-degree murder and was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole. Why does he get the opportunity and we don't? I sincerely hope that my family can continue to believe in the system and keep him where he belongs. But if he is set free, I pray hard to God that history does not repeat itself and give him the opportunity to take another life and destroy more families. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Appreciate your comments. Mr. Randall Myers.
Morning, Randy Myers, Assistant DA. We're strongly opposed to Mr. Silva's request for commutation of the sentence. First, we need to look at your problem and look at what Mr. Silva has said about that. They try to maintain that this was a manslaughter, but what the facts show at trial was that, and what he testified to, when he stated here today, that he followed Brett to this other location, and he brought a gun. He testified at trial that, I'll read from the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeal again, that he knocked to the ground with a baseball bat, picked up his gun off the ground, which Luke said here, raised it above his head and fired. It was a warning shot that somebody didn't come bash his head in. What the evidence showed at trial was that Brett was shot right here. And the forensic evidence was not that the bullet went up, the bullet was going down. There was also stripling on the forehead, which indicates that the shot, the gun was the 12 to 18 inches from his head on a downward track. That's not firing on one shot in the air. Suggests that Mr. Silva's not being honest about that. And that is the first step in rehabilitation, being honest with yourself, being honest about the facts, being honest about what you did. Another thing he testified, or he stated here today, which he testified at trial, he did not know Brett. There was one more thing when the time of crime. There were two neighbors who witnessed the crime from inside their house. They testified that the two men were standing face to face when Silva shot Brett in the head, but laying on the ground shooting him in his head. The other testimony that came forth at trial. Mr. Silva has stated that he didn't know. He knew of Brett, he didn't know. But there was testimony that over I believe a 2-year period, there were 4 instances in when they met. And they had some altercations, some words back and forth. State's evidence said that Silva threatened him. Mr. Silva's friends agreed. They said that they agreed on the 4 encounters over the 2-year period. Now there was a dispute as to whether Brett was the aggressor in making comments towards Silva or vice versa. But he knew him for over 2 years, which is contrary to what he states here before this movie. So what has he done since he's been incarcerated? What has he done to rehabilitate himself? That's the next thing that we need. Very limited programs. When you look at the certificates that he's had, the vast majority of the certificates were long ago. The progress report in the record indicates that he needs anger management. Now he took anger management, but it was many years ago. He didn't continue with that. I believe in 2005 is when he took the anger management. Clearly, he had a substance abuse and still has. He always does. He's admitted to using drugs and alcohol since he was 16 years old. And after Ms. Jackson questioned him a little bit more concerning drugs that he used, he admitted to using LSD as well. He took substance abuse. He says he took transactional analysis, substance abuse. So that was in 2000. It's interesting that from 2004 to 2009, he had a number of write-ups dealing with substances, that he had contraband in prison and was using drugs apparently during those time periods after the substance abuse treatment that he had taken. He says he did AA over the years. You know, we see a lot of inmates who take AA, NA, and they get certificates, and they take 12 steps, and they get these certificates. And every year, they may have certificates showing that they're doing these programs and taking these programs. There are no such certificates in Mr. Silva's record. The warden had said he can only, when he's in the cell block, during the time he was in the cell block, which I think it was in that period around 2000, but at least since the last, he's been a trustee for the last 7 years. So the last 7 years, he hasn't been in the cell block. And any program would be available to him. He hasn't taken any substance abuse programs. He has taken very limited amount of programs. Most of the programs he's taken recently have all been faith-based programs. Nothing with regard to any kind of vocational rehabilitation, no substance abuse, no anger management. I think that's telling, and that he clearly has not been rehabilitated, and this is a good candidate for a commutation. Finally, he's only served 29 life sentence, 29 years of life sentence. So for those reasons and the fact that there's very, very strong victim opposition, we are strongly opposed.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. Appreciate your comments. Mr. Silva, is there anything you'd like to say before we turn it over to Ms. Hogan?
Yes, sir. To everyone whose lives I have ruined and destroyed, I'm terribly sorry from the bottom of my heart. Again, I could live the rest of my life and it wouldn't be good enough to say how full of sorrow I am for what I've done to you all. And I'll be eternally sorry forever. And to this board, I would like to thank you for the opportunity for allowing me to come here this day and say these things to you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Silva. Ms. Hogan?
Thank you, Mr. Marabella. Luke Silva is the first person to say that he needed to come to prison. He's not proud of who he was at the age of 18. He was wild, he was out of control. There's no excuse for the things that he did. And there's also proof that even with a life sentence, Mr. Silva took opportunities to change as they became available. Had he been 4 months younger, he would potentially have parole eligibility after serving 25 years of his life sentence. We know that juveniles possess a great potential for rehabilitation. That's why we have Act 277. So even though Mr. Silva is not Act 277 eligible, he nonetheless shows the same type of rehabilitation and maturity over the years, the natural maturity and rehabilitation. And I agree with Ms. Jackson that the letters that I find the most impactful within Mr. Silva's packet are the letters from people that are around him every day, not just Mr. Williams, but there are other people that write that Luke inspired them to get out of the cell blocks through his cell block ministry. Luke was the inspiration to stop using drugs, to come out of the cell blocks. He has dedicated himself to fitness and to recreation, and he uses his skills in both of those areas to be relatable to younger people, to older people, to people from all different walks of life. Luke is also on the CPR team. He helps revive people, or he's always on the lookout for people that might need water. Or so just the other day I was up here looking through an Anglite magazine, and there's a picture of Luke passing out waters and snacks at a seniors bingo event. He's active in his community. He's there in every way that is ever asked of him. He volunteers. There's also a letter from Assistant Warden Sanders that describes Luke as a pillar of the Camp D community. And there's a letter from former Warden Vinoy in which there was a female correctional officer that was about to get attacked by another inmate, and Luke stopped that attack from happening. These are all proof of rehabilitation, and it's a genuine rehabilitation. Luke has tremendous family support. If he is granted release, he has the support of the Louisiana Parole Project. They can immediately do a substance abuse evaluation on him. They can link him with substance abuse programming as needed, with a sponsor. And for all of these reasons, we'd ask this board to recognize the profound rehabilitation that is evident in this case and to grant.
Thank you, Ms. Hogan. Appreciate your comments. Can't wait to vote. Ms. Jackson.
First, let me say to the Umbrella family and to everyone who spoke today, we appreciate your input, we appreciate your comments. It helps to inform our decisions. This is a hard case, but they're all hard. They're all hard because there's pain and loss in every case. And then there's redemption, sometimes not. But these cases are very difficult, and I don't take it lightly, and nobody on this panel takes it lightly, because we know while we can't experience your pain, we know that your pain is real. Very evident in your comments today. And I want to thank you, and I want you to know that I listened and I have heard. But I'm going to offer you something. I hope you'll receive it. Forgiveness is not for the offender. It's not for you. It's for you. And while your pain and your loss will never go away, anger and bitterness can go away. And you need not be held captive by those emotions. And I say that with all sincerity. And I hope you'll take it to heart. Our job is to look at everything. And of course, we look at the facts. The impacts, the victims and other people. But we're also tasked with looking at who the offender is today. In your minds, he will forever be that person who took your loved one. In your mind, he will ever be that 18-year-old who acted horrible And I understand that. But Mr. Silva has grown up in prison. He was 18 when this crime occurred. And at 18, you're not the same person as you are at 47. And he has grown up in prison, and he has grown up well in prison. And I agree with Ms. Hogan when she says prison has probably been the best thing for him. And it's demonstrated by the way that he has conducted himself over the last 47 years. And again, I see a lot of cases, and I see a lot of people who claim to be rehabilitated. You know, the first words out of their mouth is, I am a rehabilitated man. But what I look at is not what the offender says about himself, but I look at what those around him say about him. And I can't tell you that I didn't mention all the letters, but he has had a tremendously positive impact on the lives of everybody that has come to know him. When a free person who is the Camp D education for comes to him and says, I have a problem with this inmate, I don't know how to handle it. And they come to another inmate, and that inmate goes to the offending inmate and makes him see is wrong, and then is able to resolve the situation in a diplomatic way. That shows he's grown up, and he's accomplished what incarceration, one of the goals of incarceration is, and that is rehabilitation. The warden's comments, the past warden's comments, everybody who has worked with him in any capacity have indicated that this is not the same person that he was at 18. And I was a judge for 28 years, and I've heard a lot of stuff. I'm pretty good at figuring out BS. I was known for that. But the flip side of that is I can also figure out what's real, what's genuine. And I believe that Mr. Silva's rehabilitation change is real and it's genuine. And for those reasons, I believe that it would be appropriate to recommend to the governor commutation of sentence to 75 years based on his outstanding work within prison and his growth and his maturity. That would be my recommendation, Jim.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Mr. Freeman?
Okay, it is very, very difficult to understand. You know, Mr. Silva, it sounds like that y'all were the two big boys on the block and wanted to see who was the baddest. But I mean, the baddest would have been a lot better done with the fist and not a gun. There was several witnesses that say that there was a baseball bat involved and all of that. And the testimony shows that, the shot was not to warn people. I mean, the shot was to hit somebody. But as Ms. Jackson stated, you have done a lot. So today my vote will also be to commute to 75 years. I know this isn't a parole hearing, but I won't, since this may not come back before us, no contact with the victim's family and electronic monitoring. If you get anywhere near that victim's family, you will be sent back to prison.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Mr. Rochette?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I would like to thank the victim's family. To make a trip, Baton Rouge, and appear before this board takes courage, fortitude, and integrity. And I want to thank you
is the victim is always a part of this process. It's stated in our mission statement. Be part of the process, very important. But Mr. Silver was 18 years old when he committed this crime. And my job as a board member is to look for maturity and rehabilitation. Mr. Silver has not had a write-up in over 10 years. He has performed community service. And by the letters we received from former offenders, he has aided and assisted the staff in helping others to become rehabilitated. He has taken sufficient number of programs. And I think he has matured to the point where he is able to recognize his terrible mistakes 29 years ago. And I don't think he's going to make those mistakes again. Angola can still hear us, but we temporarily lost video with Angola, but they can hear, so I will continue. And our job is to look at the offense, evaluate it, but more important, our job is to see who Mr. Silver is today. And would he be a public safety risk? I don't think so. So my vote is to commute to 75 years. And hopefully Mr. Silver will come before the parole board, and then we will make the decision on whether or not he will be released or not.
Thank you, Mr. Rocha. I'd also like to thank everyone who appeared here today, the courage and grief that you've shown. Certainly understand. We all we don't know what you're going to hear. You appreciate you. I'd also like to thank the supporters as well for Mr. Silver. I've been in the criminal justice system for 50 years. These cases don't get easy. Every day they're hard and painful. We see the pain of everybody that's involved in this case, especially the family victim. But without going into all of the things my colleagues have said, I agree with you. My vote today would like to recommend the governor to commute the sentence to 75 years. So, Mr. Silva, if you can hear us still there, the parole board has voted, the pardon board has voted in favor of recommending to the governor that your sentence be commuted to 75 years.
Thank you very much.
So they granted it. And for those of you wondering, like, hey, why didn't Mr. O'Shea take the victim's advocate approach there? And the answer, I believe, is because they only had 4 board members on the panel. When you have 4, you need it to be unanimous. Otherwise, having that 5th board does give Mr. O'Shea the option to provide some type of, I guess, something, relief, empathy, to feel acknowledgement, not like you're beaten up, but he couldn't do that in this case. And frankly, this case is tough for me. it's tough for a lot of reasons, but the amount of time he served and the way that it happened is just so different than what we're accustomed to seeing. And really what gets me is the pain of the family and how adamant they are. And then also about the dishonesty it seems that we're getting during the process. But it does make me wonder, we see over and over on Channel Mandu too, where people literally are taking lives and getting out in 5 years, 6 years, like it's no big deal. It's just Louisiana is a whole different story. And I think you have to respect them for that. I know I do, but then when a grant comes into play, but anyways, this was just a recommendation to the governor. As we know, the governor did commute. He's on that list. And now we're going to see the parole hearing, which takes place really just about a year later. And there's a playlist if you want to see it. It's called The Purge. It's the governor's 56. And we have been making decent progress through that list. Some hearings are a little boring, but they all go back to the blast of the past, where they're a bit more interesting with their classic favorites. And there's no shoo-in to get recommended because it is a new governor. There's no loyalty to this other governor's pardon, so we don't know what to expect, and that's what we're going to find out now, if he gets granted or not. So with that, let's jump in.
So today we have for parole consideration Legardo Silva, DOC number 364086, who's a first felony offender who was convicted of second-degree murder at a trial by jury, and on January 18th, 96, and on February 1st, 96, was sentenced to life, and then on 12/19/23, Governor Edwards commuted that sentence from life to 75 years with parole eligibility, giving you a parole eligibility date of 8/1/21, a good time date of May 12th, 33, and a full term date of November 12th, 70. Does that information sound correct to you?
Yes, sir.
All right. So you're up first. We're asking you to tell us what you did to cause yourself to be incarcerated, and why do you think the parole board should vote to release you today?
Yes, sir. First, I would just like to thank this board for bringing me before you. I appreciate that very much. Back in 1994, I had went to a football game. It was the school that I went to. It was their homecoming game. After the game, some friends and we went out to shoot pool. While I was out, I got into a verbal altercation with Brett Preller. We changed locations, and we actually got into a physical altercation. In the midst of fighting, someone came at me with a baseball bat and hit me with the bat. And that's when I made the worst decision of my life. I grabbed a gun and shot it one time. And tragically, I killed Brett Preller. For that action, I'm full of sorrow for the pain and suffering I've caused to the Preller family and all of his friends. The amount of pain and suffering I have caused them all is unbearable. And for that, I'll always be apologetic for what I've done. The worst day of my life became the worst days of your lives. And I'll forever be sorry for that. None of you deserve what I did. And most importantly, Brett didn't deserve what I did. In regards to your second question, 30 years ago, my life was a mess. A series of bad choices led to worse choices and led to more bad choices. I was out of control. I was wild. I had no aim or purpose in life. And all of these things netted in doing something that was unconscionable and that was senseless. The burden of all of this lies upon my shoulders. And as I lived my life and I came to this prison, I gained a lot of knowledge and wisdom. And I realized that I couldn't just come and say that I wanted to be a better person, because words can sometimes be hollow. I wanted my life and my actions to be evidence of all the pain and remorse and sorrow that I feel for everything that I've done. And now I am the kind of person who walks the right way. That's my motivation, to walk the right way for everything that I've done, for the tremendous amount of pain that I've caused, to do that which is right as opposed to wrong. I've become the kind of person who resolves conflicts. I've become the kind of person who helps to mediate in situations. Men come to me for help and whatever they're dealing with in their lives, be it personal problems, be it problems at home, be it problems in cases, or even going through different various problems with addiction and substance use issues here in the prison. I'm the recreation orderly. I'm responsible for organizing activities and games and sporting events in the camp. And I've been able to come across a wide spectrum of people. And this has allowed me to interact and be a part of men's lives and to help them. I am the lead pastor of our cell block ministry team. I'm also the lead minister of our intercessory prayer group. I teach Bible studies at our church. I preach sermons. When they have organizations that come in off the streets, different ministry groups, I'm always there to help them and facilitate whatever they have going on. And I'm someone in our camp that people can rely on. My motivation, again, is all of the pain and suffering I've caused. I wanted to be able to atone for what I've done. And I'll say that we moved on and changed our lives. I want you all to know that there's not a wisp of that person that did those things all those years ago. He's not there. I'm a new creation. This prison has given me the tools to succeed in life. Just recently, in the last couple of months, I've seen guys that I haven't seen in a long time that went to different prisons, and I baptized them in the church, and they tell me that they're still living a good life, that they've turned their lives around and they never look back. And I hope that if afforded the opportunity, I could do that on a grander scale. And that's why I'm asking you to give me your vote today. Thank you.
Gordon, do you have anything to add about his prison record, prison behavior?
Since he's been incarcerated, he has a total of 25 DD reports for the last being in April of 2023. April of 2013. He completed anger management, moral compass, thinking for a change. His Tiger score is low. In review of his prison record, I did find where in April of 2020, there was an incident at Camp D involving some offenders and an employee. The employee, I want to understand, that may have been being assaulted in some kind of way with a fire extinguisher, it kind of looks like in the record. And he did assist and make sure the employee got to safety. So I wanted to bring that up just to let y'all know. But other than that, that's all I got.
Thank you. Today we have lots of people in support. We're going to have first Mr. Kerry Myers with the Parole Project, who in supporting wants to speak.
Good morning, Mr. Barra. Know that Parole Project is here to support him with all our services, should this board grant him a day.
Thank you. Also, we have present and wanting to speak, John Batt Sr., a friend of Mr. Silva.
Thank you all for having me. And I was asked to offer up my qualifications first for coming here. I'm a Republican, served on the last Republican, served on the Walton City Council, and a delegate to the conventions for the last 6 out of 7 years. Currently serve on the executive committee of the LAGOP, and I've been on the state subcommittee for 24 years. I chair the parish executive committee in Orleans Parish. I was chairman of the board of Crime Stoppers and chairman of the board of trustees currently. And what I also did was serve with Sandy Krasnoff on Victims and Citizens Against Crime. I give you these because I've never advocated for felons' rights until now. Mr. Silva has spent decades in Angola. He's not the same man that went in. He went in when this happened, he was 18 years and I think 4 or 5 months years old. What he has accomplished during his incarceration, finding Jesus Christ and God, and showing those around him and sharing that with them, is nothing short of amazing. I would like to see him do that in the real world. 3 decades is pretty much a lifetime. It would be of great value in the outside world, and I would like to use Luke Silva to talk to at-risk children and kids in the schools and the mentorship that I've done over the years, and walk with me when he gets released. And I ask for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Today, we also have Miss Cynthia Bergovich, Mr. Silva's mother. Would you speak?
Yes, thank you. First of all, I want to express my sorrow to the Kreller family for all the pain that they've suffered. I'd like to thank the board for allowing me to speak on my son's behalf today. Luke had a difficult childhood. I was young when I married, and I didn't marry very well, or I wasn't really prepared to be a mom. And my husband and I fought some. And then my second marriage, I thought would be better. He was an older fellow, so I thought he would bring some stability to my life, but that didn't work out. He turned out to be an alcoholic, and he was physically violent with me and my son and emotionally abusive. But for many years now, Luke has walked the walk of Christ. He has helped other inmates. He's helped men read and write. He has mentored many men. I've received letters from inmates thanking me for the son I have and the man he is today. A church group came recently. I think they were the Saints Prison Ministry, and they offered Luke a position in the ministry. They even came to see him at the Angola rodeo. One year, a fella came into my car lot. I work with my brother, and he said, "Hey, I'm looking for a car. I just got out of Angola." And my brother said, "Hey, Cindy, this guy was in Angola." And I said, "Do you know my son, Luke?" He says, "Do I know him? He used to preach down at the cell blocks, and he'd make the hair stand up on my neck." So that's just one of the instances of Luke. And he's had so many testimonies from inmates that I know the board has had a chance to look at, telling us all how different he is. He is a Christian. He is kind. He's caring. He's giving. He cares for people deeply and wants to help them. My husband, Jeff, is here with me today. We have a home for Luke. My brother has a job for him at our car lot. His family and friends are all here in support of his petition. And I just want to ask the board to please consider him, and please let him come home. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. We also have Angelina Clavier, a friend in support on Zoom. Teresa Silva, a friend in support on Zoom. Pastor in support on Zoom. Shannon Morning, friend in support on Zoom. Cesar Parrish, cousin in support on Zoom. Joshua Morning, friend in support on Zoom. Luis Alvarado, cousin in support on Zoom. Eduardo Silva, senior, grandfather in support on Zoom. Troy West, friend in support on Zoom. Christian Andrew, Dukes, friend in support on Zoom. Terry Orlando, a family friend in support at was. Annie Robinson, a friend in support on Zoom. Kristen Austin, a friend in support on Zoom. Wendy, in support at was. Myself, in support at was. Oscar Rokovich, in support on Zoom. Kim Rokovich, in support at was. Christopher, cousin in support at was. Lily, cousin in support at was. Ernest Rokovich, in support at was. Tom Wilson, in support at was. Steve, in support at was. Jack Rokovich, in support at was. Timmy Rokovich, in support at was. Now hear from Judge Laura White.
Thank you. Good morning. You know, these aren't just people that came off the street. These are people in the support system. They came as far as Chicago and Georgia to be here. There are additional 13 people outside, and I want to thank you all for allowing them to watch the video outside so that they can see it. I am a retired judge from Orleans Parish. I was on the criminal district court bench for 16 years. I've never appeared at a parole board hearing to ask for someone to get released. I did appear at his clemency hearing and asked at that time. And as you know, getting a grant from a parole board is like threading a camel through the eye of a needle. He was successful, and we find ourselves here. What's interesting about Luke is that Luke was sentenced to a life in prison. Life means life. And life usually is something that you will not see an inmate make the decisions like Luke has made to better himself while in prison. Because what's the point? The point is he's going to sit there and smoke weed and not do anything for the rest of his career, because I've watched that many times, as I know you have. I started the reentry program in this state of Louisiana because I had had other people that I had gotten out of prison and they had failed miserably and gone back to prison as recidivists. I learned from that and from my 38 years in law enforcement as a judge. I was a criminal defense lawyer where I met Luke and represented him from 1998 to 2008. I was an assistant district attorney in East Baton Rouge under O.C. Brown and Doug Morrow. I was an assistant district attorney with Harry Connick. My goal in life was to put people in prison. When I became a criminal defense lawyer, I learned that there are things that occur in the criminal justice system that should be righted. I worked on Luke's case because I thought it was a manslaughter case because the facts in the case showed that there had been a fight and Luke was a young 18-year-old stupido that took a gun to a fist fight. He shot one time and he committed a murder. I've also had the opportunity to watch Luke from the time I became a judge in 2008 until the present. I've had over 30 years of experience with Luke. I am aware of what Luke has done and his spiritual path in prison. I am so confident about Luke's release and the fact that he can be successful and worth your opportunity to give him the benefit and honor of parole. That my husband and my husband is outside. I'm a Republican now, I don't have to get elected anymore. My husband and Donald Trump talk on text message every day apparently. We are offering Luke an opportunity to either live with us, live near us in Folsom, Louisiana, and to work with us. I was also successful in getting other people out of prison like Norris Henderson, who I know you all know. I was Norris Henderson's lawyer. So I know what success looks like for an inmate that is released. Luke is a murderer. He will always be a murderer. That is a sin and a stain that will always stay with him. That is not something that we are asking to be removed. We're asking for supervision from this parole board and strict and strident supervision that someone like a retired judge that has too much time and energy can provide over an inmate that would be free. We know what it looks like to be successful and the resources that are required. Luke does not have a mental problem. He's never had a mental problem other than bad choices at his young age. He is now Luke, a 48-year-old man. He's been in almost 30 years. These people are people that Luke's mind stays in their lives all the time. I've spent time with inmates that their mind is only in the prison and they only think about prison things. Luke talks about newspaper articles he's read. He is super positive for somebody in prison. I would be a terrible inmate. Luke is someone that can be trusted because Luke is walking the walk. And how do you trust change from someone? Look at his 30-year career as an inmate. He has actually been successful as an inmate to walk the walk and not only make changes, but to do them and continue to do them. We would provide Luke the resources, we would provide him the supervision to make sure that not only because of role supervision, but because of personal supervision, that we would make sure he gets the community resources that are required. Because I know what it's like for them not to do well in reentry, for them to not do well in the free world and to readapt. Luke is deeply thoughtful in his remorsefulness, and that's something that has always surprised me because I had not been, in essence, a friend to an inmate that I had spent time with from back in the latest was 2008. So Luke has made changes, and I hope that this board will grant him the mercy that you hold the power to grant. Luke took the life of a young man who could never take it back. He will always be a murderer. We understand that there will always be strong law enforcement objection to this, as it should be, and always strong family objection, as it should be. I understand that. I faced people and didn't provide mercy and did provide mercy. But we're begging you to please see that this is the kind of case that when he was granted parole, pardoned by the governor, we never expected that. And we're so grateful, and we would ask you the same. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. All right. We have several people in letters of opposition. We'll start out with Deborah Montrell.
Thank you for this opportunity. and Brett's aunt. Mother? Give me a minute. You're right, Luke is a murderer. And he will always be a murderer. And it is not for us to forgive him. That will become on his judgment day. He has come from his background was not good, as he previously stated. And you're looking to bring him back into the same community, the same atmosphere that he was raised in. I don't think that that's going to help. I'm so glad that he has found God in prison. I've had God all my life. That's why I don't commit murder. I follow the rules. I'm a law-abiding citizen. He was not. And whatever he does and whatever he did in prison is wonderful. That's good for him. But it does not erase what he did. He was sentenced to second-degree murder, life in prison without benefit of parole or pardon. I don't understand why we do. The judicial system is something that's supposed to handle it. And I feel like it has failed us. I think that it is wrong for him to have a second chance. Brett does not have a second chance. We do not have a second chance with him. And Luke, whatever he's done in prison is wonderful. I think he's found his calling. And I think that his calling should be in prison to help all the rest of the prisoners that are there. That seems to be where God wants him. And that's where he should remain. He is a murderer, and that will be his title for the rest of his life. And I do not think that he deserves a second chance, because I am fearful for my life. I am fearful for the Crowell family, because I don't know. He says he's been rehabilitated. He's taken courses. Anybody can take a course. That doesn't mean it's changed. It might look good on paper, but what does it really mean? His life sentence should be a life sentence. It has been commuted to 75 years now. That's not life usually, but he's only served 30 years of that 75, and he deserves to serve the rest, because Brett has not gotten a second chance. Brett's life was stolen from him. Brett's life was stolen from all of us. And he needs to remain in prison and serve God the way he is doing now and help other prisoners. He's not going to help me out. And I am fearful. And I hope that if he is let out, that we as law-abiding citizens are protected in some kind of way from him. Because we don't know. He's seen all of us. We don't know what he would do. We don't know. I'm fearful. I'm sure the rest of my family is fearful. And I want him to serve his full term. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll have Rob Vodakovich.
Yep. I'm Rob Vodakovich, and I'm Brett's uncle. And before I get started with sort of a prepared statement, I just want to make a couple quick comments. I think that myself and my family seem to consider a 30-year sentence far from life. And if you want to know what life is, it's Brett Crowell. He's no longer here. He has no life. So that's my definition of a life sentence. As far as a manslaughter case, that's the second time I've heard that in 2 different parole hearings. And the jury disagreed 100%. They felt that it was, in fact, a second-degree murder trial, and he was charged with second-degree murder. So make no mistake, please, about that. So on behalf of Brett, on behalf of the family, on behalf of the other members of the family who could not be here today, in particular, Brett's dad, Brett's 2 sisters, they could not be here today, and a bunch of cousins. I'd like to thank the board for this opportunity. Since the board was not, this current board was not here for the last session, I would like to just point out a few things or share a few things with you. Originally, in the first hearing, our family and friends submitted a substantial number of emotional victim statements prior to the last session, and we submitted a bunch for this session. We all hope that you had an opportunity to review them. I think they say a lot. Our family traveled to Baton Rouge the day of the hearing. Our hope was that the board would come here with an open mind and base their decision on facts of the case and our emotional pleas, and the board would not commute a life sentence without parole that was handed down by the jury. Despite our excruciating emotional pleas of why the sentence should not be reduced, it was clear that the board's decision was already predetermined and that everything we did was really in vain. And that became clear as soon as we got started on this. So anyway, I just wanted to let you know that. It was clear to us also that the only way that the decision would not be what it is was that if Mr. Silva really blew it, and he did, because he is well rehearsed and he was well coached. I hear the same thing today from him, except he's had a little bit additional time to be even more well rehearsed and well coached for the board. With that said, it is our hope again that this board has an open mind, has not come here with a predetermined decision, and will weigh the reasons why the victim's family requests that Silva serve the full 75-year term, which was made by the previous board and does not get any reduction in this time. As for my plea to you, there were some inconsistencies in the last board meeting. You can call them inconsistencies, you can call them lies, but there were some facts that were not correct. And in my opinion, if he can't admit to what happened the night in 1994, then I truly believe that he cannot be truly remorseful or sorry for murdering Brett. Several character references stated how he's helped people in prison and he's a leader and a mentor. Well, I really hope that is the case. I hope that he did find Jesus in 2010, as he said he did. So maybe the remainder of his 75 years in jail is where he can best serve other people. So hopefully that is what takes place. While I can understand his family and his mother's pleas for him to be released by saying things like he is forgiven, he is loving, he is giving, they beg for his mercy to be let out. Well, despite the victim's family pleas, Brett will never come home due to Silva. Despite all of Brett's hopes and dreams, they will never be met due to Silva. Brett also has a home that he could come home to. He has a family he could come home to, but he never would. This individual, Mr. Silva, just to let you know, at the trial, he mocked the family. He tried to intimidate the family, literally during the trial. The individual literally celebrated and toasted the murdering of Brett on the 1-year anniversary of his murder. This is all, by the way, documented in court documents. This individual stated he got his respect by murdering Brett. It's beyond comprehension why the victim's family is and will continue to serve a life sentence while Silva is free to just go celebrate with his family and his friends. It's beyond comprehension. Silva had a chance not to do what he did, and he chose to follow Brett from a bar. He chose to get in a fight with Brett, and according to the court documents again, he literally decided to pull a gun, point blank range, and shoot Brett. So that's what we're dealing with here, right? No mistake about it. So while disappointed that the life sentence was commuted, we appealed to the board at a minimum that Silva remain in jail for the full 75-year term that was recommended by the last board. We hope that there is no time that is allowed because he attended some classes. And we also hope that there's no time allowed because he of good behavior and he's helping people in jail. Maybe that's where, like I said, maybe that's where he should be to help people in jail. So, with that said, I thank you.
Okay. We have Stacy Giovanni, victim sister. No, yeah, victim sister.
Mom is here to speak. It's Kate Crowell.
Okay, great. All right, next we'll have Kate Crowell, the victim's mother. Thank you.
My name is Kay. Thanks to Dr. Hibbleton for here to speak. Pretty much what I have to say is what they've already said. At the time of the trial, I left everything up to God because I was not there. I did not know what happened. I prayed that whatever the outcome was because God knew what happened. He was the one that was going to make the outcome be what it was. Also prayed that once he got convicted, that he would get a conscience and live with that guilty conscience for the rest of his life. That would be his sentence to be. And it appears that he's as sorry as he says he is. It appears that those prayers were answered. The life sentence that he imposed on my family is irrevocable. It will forever be there. We talk about forever all the time. It comes up in conversation. As far as him saying that somebody came after him with a bat at the fight. Yeah, they did. Brett was by himself, and him and his friends were all beating up on Brett. So Brett's friend saw this out of a window and came out with a bat to clear the air to get the other kids off of Brett so that Luke and Brett could have an even fight. And at the end of the fight, Brett took his hands off of him and said, "Now go home. If the fight is over." And at that point is when he pulled the gun out of his waistband and shot him. His friend was there and watched the whole thing. And that was said in court. So it's not like they came after him specifically with the bat. They were all beating up on Brett. And then I don't know what else to say. His sentence should be the same as ours and as Brett's. It should be for life, and it should be irrevocable. And there's just no words to even say.
Thank you. Randall Myers from the District Attorney's Office, who we're going to let speak, who's on Zoom.
Good morning, Randall Myers, Assistant DA, Jefferson Parish. We are strongly opposed to Mr. Silva's request for parole. First off, looking at his programming that he's done while incarcerated, very limited, thinking for a change, anger management, and he has certificates for moral compass, victim awareness, substance abuse back in 1998, and then some faith-based certificates as well. Very strong victim opposition, as you've heard. And that's a strong reason for denying his parole today. And I've got to talk about something that Lori White stated. She talked about reviewing this case, and it's a manslaughter case. Well, it's not a manslaughter case. If you look at the evidence, two things, and these go together. It's not a manslaughter case, and I'll talk a little bit about the evidence, which I generally don't do. And the other thing is that Mr. Silva has not been honest with this board, with the board at the pardon board hearing, and I opposed him for that at the pardon board hearing back in 2023. And when he was asked what happened today, he simply stated that I shot the gun one time and Mr. Kreller was killed. In his application to the pardon board, Mr. Silva stated that he fired a warning shot into the air and that he had never met Mr. Silva prior to this incident. The state had witnesses who testified of 4 instances in the 2 years prior to the murder in which Mr. Silva threatened to kill Mr. Kreller. Defense witnesses confirmed the 4 meetings, although they disputed whether it was Kreller who was making the allegations of, threatening to kill him, or whether Mr. Silva made the allegations on threatening to kill him, or whether Mr. Kreller was the aggressor. But the point, though, is that he was not honest. Shooting one time in the air is clearly inaccurate. Testimony from the state's forensic pathologist, the track of the bullet was inconsistent with a shot into the air. Mr. Kreller was either, in the opinion of the pathologist, was either shorter than Mr. Silva or below Mr. Silva because the track was downward. And very importantly, in my opinion, is the skin around the entrance wound contained stripling, which indicates that the gun was fired a distance 12 to 18 inches away from Mr. Kreller's head in a downward fashion. That's murder, that's not manslaughter. And I disagree with Ms. White and her statement that this is a manslaughter case. So for those reasons, we remain strongly opposed to his request for parole.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Myers. We also have law enforcement opposition from the sheriff and from the Attorney General's office in the record. How about Ms. Holt?
Yes, sir.
We'll go ahead and let you have the last word.
Thank you, Mr. Barra. I would like to acknowledge that this board has a very difficult job and that this is a very, very, very difficult case. And I I would like this board to analyze this case through the lens of Luke's age at the time. He was 18 years old and 4 months. He was a first offender. And while he's not considered a juvenile for purposes of these hearings, the same impulsivity, the same reckless characteristics of children that make them different for sentencing purposes, those don't automatically go away magically the day that somebody turns 18 years old. And so at 18 years old and 4 months, Luke Silva had those same characteristics of impulsivity, recklessness, and that all manifested into an unspeakable and unforgivable act of violence. He doesn't make excuses for that. What is also clear in people that commit crimes very, very early in life is that they have a profound capacity for rehabilitation and for change. And that is evident in this case too, from an honest objective review of Luke's record. Throughout the past 29 years, he has transformed from the person that he was into a person who is now self-described as a pillar of his community. There's letters of support from the warden and the assistant warden of his camp. He's one of the few trustees over at Camp D, and he is called on, in addition to his normal job and his volunteer work, he is called upon to do anything, and he does whatever is asked of him. In August, he almost had a heat stroke because he was running around all day long, setting things up and taking things down. He doesn't shy away from hard work. He has an open door policy with his fellow inmates, as you see from the letters that we submitted from other inmates. He's taught people how to read. He's brought people closer to God. He's gone to the cell blocks to minister to people in their time of need, and he uplifts people. And clearly, the capacity for change that has led to different considerations for youthful offenders is clear in this case. So we would ask this board to consider all of these factors. We know that this is a very difficult case. We know that there is very intense opposition. If there's any specific question as to the crime itself or to anything in the record, either Luke Silva or myself can answer those questions, but we would, Luke has a very, very supportive family and community, as evident from all the people that are gathered here today and others that are watching. He has multiple different options for places to live and to work. The environment that he came from is very different than the environment that he would be going back to. He'd be going to the parole project, and then he would be going to his long-term residence plan, either with his mother or with Judge White. And so for all of these reasons, we would ask this board to consider everything that Luke has done. In addition to the programs that were mentioned, Luke also took it upon himself to take correspondence courses to become certified physical trainer and nutritionist. And there's other things that he has done that he hasn't gotten certificates for. As mentioned, he came to the aid of a guard who was being attacked by other people. He comes to the aid of people all the time who are in need. And he would continue to do that if granted the opportunity for a second chance. He is a first offender. He has a very low risk of recidivism, and he's the living embodiment that even people that commit senseless acts of violence in their youth they have a capacity for change. So we would ask this board to consider this case and to grant his opportunity for his request for parole within the conditions deemed appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, your case is assigned to me, so I only have one small question. What were y'all fighting about? What was the whole argument about?
Yes, sir. Our group of friends, they didn't get along. There was a lot of back and forth, a lot of he said, she said type of things. And this particular night, that was just carryover from that.
So y'all were fighting about nothing?
There was a girl involved where one of his friends was messing with the girl who was a girlfriend, one of my friends. And like I said, one thing led to another, and the two groups of friends, they just didn't like each other at all. So yes, sir, basically we were fighting over nothing.
All right. That's the only question I had. Anybody else has another question? No, I have no questions. All right, I guess it's time to vote. Before I vote, I just want to say, like Ms. Hogan said, this is one of the toughest cases that we've had. We have two families with both have big losses and over nothing that we finding out, that this all happened over nothing. Luke, you're a true first offender with a good prison record. I got many letters of support from inmates and others about you, and this is just a tragedy. I have just as many letters against you. So it just makes it a major tragedy. Today, I'm gonna have to vote to deny your parole due to the violent nature of the crime committed with a gun and the strong law enforcement opposition and victim opposition. And also that you haven't only served 30 years of what would have been a life sentence and now 75. So you haven't even gotten to the halfway mark yet of the reduced sentence. So at this point, I can't vote to let you out. But I'll recommend that you continue with your good work in prison. You continue following the Lord, that you apply again when you're eligible. You're still a young man. And I wish you good luck, but I can't vote to let you out after 30 years for this kind of crime.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Ms. Renata?
All right, Mr. Silva, I was not present at your pardon hearing, so I didn't vote on that decision. But I want to commend you for, all the good work you're doing in prison. You do a tremendous service to your community, and I agree with what was said over here, that maybe that's God's calling for you at this time, in this season of your life. And we spoke of second chances, and you have gotten a second chance. You got numbers on your sentence instead of life, which means you have a good time there, and you can work. You know what you can do to work towards that. I looked at same thing Mr. Barra did, and the amount of time served on the new reduced sentence of 75 years, 30 years is not enough. So based on that and the opposition that's been expressed today, my vote today is to deny your parole. And I do urge you to keep doing your good work. And thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Mr. Tillis? Mr. Sylvan, I'd like to commend you too on the work that you're doing there. I've been involved in prison ministry, and I'm glad to see that you are doing something constructive. My vote today is to deny because of the opposition and the seriousness of the crime.
Yes, sir. Thank you again.
Well, Mr. Silva, today your parole has been denied. I encourage you to apply again when you're eligible. And this will conclude our business today. Mr. Silva.
So they denied, and frankly, I'm a little bit surprised. I mean, they have been really tough, but it's I wonder if there's anything that they could have done differently not to deny. It's it's a strange approach to come up and try to almost sentence the case and remake the case look like, look, it was a street fight when there were bats pulled out and he pulled the gun. And it just seems like a weird strategy to try to rewrite history. And it is interesting. I don't know if you're familiar with watching on the other channels. There's a link below to Mandu 2, where you see here we just covered Louisiana hearings. Mandu 2, we cover Connecticut, we cover Utah, we cover Illinois, we cover Vermont and Iowa. And you see in Connecticut and Iowa, I mean, you can literally take multiple lives and be paroled within just a few years. We saw one hearing where the man pumped 3 bullets into someone's stomach, and he got 3-year sentence. A bullet, the parole board said a bullet for each year, or a year for each bullet. Maybe it was 4 bullets in 4 years, and it wasn't murder. The person lived, but still. We've covered many who take lives and are out within less than 10 years, and then you have in this case where the serving a whole lot of time. And I almost feel like so many of us could have been in this situation. There's just luck of the draw, right? You're in a group fist fight, a bat comes out, some dumb 18-year-old does something stupid, but from what you hear, it also seems that he was gosh, I mean, like the way things were handled afterwards, and but this is the court document Sir Richard found. The court has painstakingly reviewed the transcript of the petitioner's trial, over 800 pages in length, to place the 5 withheld statements in the proper context in relation to the testimony of all of the eyewitnesses who testified. Having done so, the court can be the court that the petitioner, who was admittedly armed with a concealed weapon, voluntarily chose to follow the victim to location for the express purpose of fighting. When Silva began losing the fist-stick encounter, even after his friends had come to his assistance, he drew his weapon and shot the victim between the eyes at point-blank range. And this is what Randy Meyer kept pointing out. How important is it to have a DA show up? Because these things might not have been brought up. The testimony of Dr. Garcia and the trial clears provides the independent, unbiased support for the conclusion, the state court's decision that the withheld statements were not sufficient material so as to constitute improperly withheld evidence. And it does seem to me that, again, in these hearings, all these years later, he was still going with that approach, and their team was going with that approach. And it was like, it's just kind of weird. Now, what do you think? Do you think they should have gotten released? I'm still caught off guard by what Mr. O'Shea had said in the last hearing, and what Miss Jackson had said about forgiveness and blah blah blah. Very off-putting to hear that come from parole board members, and my favorite ones. But he was denied, and we have a playlist for this. Check it out, the playlist, the Purge, the Governor's 56. And we're going to cover every single one of those hearings. We've covered many of them already. Again, here it is. Thank you, Sir Richard, for tying it all up, lining it all up. I could show you the spreadsheet of what it looks like, the Purge. So here it is. If you want to see the hard work Sir Richard does, it's right here. It's one designated tab for all this work. And if you can see, we have the offender date, scrolls down all the way here. We have whether we have their previous hearings. And then this is what we're going to do right now. We are going to scrape this one out on the to-do list because we did it. So let's go do that. And it's always a nice way to do it. We crop it up. Watch out for any spoiler alerts here where it shows the results. And I'll put the date 2027, 2024. And we'll keep on plugging away. But yeah, I don't have much more to add to this hearings. It is an interest for me. It is a struggle. For me, it's a struggle. And maybe truth will set him free. And with that, I'll let you go.
While we can't experience your pain, we know that your pain is real. Very evident in your comments today. And I want to thank you, and I want you to know that I have listened and I have heard. But I'm going to offer you something. I hope you'll receive it. Forgiveness is not for the offender. It's not for you. It's for you. And while your pain and your loss will never go away, anger and bitterness can go. And you need not be held captive by those emotions. And I say that with all sincerity. And I hope you'll take it to heart.